The story opens inside a crowded restaurant where Sarah, a shy young waitress, struggles with her speech. Every order comes with stammers that draw whispers and smirks. She carries the weight of childhood memories, mocked at school, silenced at home, now surviving in silence among cruel customers. But behind her trembling voice lies resilience she doesn't even realize she carries. The Friday night rush had filled the restaurant with clinking glasses, bursts of laughter, and the steady hum of conversations layered one over another. Waitresses wove through the maze of tables like dancers, balancing trays heavy with plates, while waiters called out orders with effortless rhythm. And then there was Sarah. Her notepad shook slightly in her hand as she approached table 4, where a family waited with impatient eyes. She forced a smile, the kind that cost her more than it gave. Her lips parted to speak. Would you like to start with water or... The words stumbled out, tripping over one another like stones scattered on a path. The father sighed loudly, rolling his eyes. The teenage son smirked and nudged his sister, who bit back a giggle. Sarah kept her gaze fixed on her paper, as if reading the words would anchor them into place. This was her battlefield every night. Not the dishes or the long shifts, but her own tongue, her own voice. A stutter that had shadowed her since childhood. Each syllable carrying the memory of classrooms where laughter stabbed sharper than any blade. Teachers rushing her, students mimicking her, even her own parents telling her to just try harder. She scribbled their order quickly, retreating before the family could add more insults. At the counter, she steadied herself, whispering the words she wished she could say fluently. She imagined a world where her voice flowed like everyone else's. Smooth, uninterrupted, strong. But reality never gave her that gift. Back on the floor, the noise seemed louder. Every laugh sounded like it was about her. Every whisper felt sharp enough to cut. Still, she pressed forward, tray in hand, balancing glasses that trembled only slightly less than her own body. Yet there was something inside Sarah. A quiet defiance, a seed of resilience that refused to be silenced. Every night she returned, knowing the sting of ridicule awaited her. She endured because she had no choice, but also because some part of her longed to prove she was more than the brokenness others saw. As she placed another order down, a ripple of laughter rose from the far corner. She flinched instinctively, though she hadn't even spoken. The laughter carried across the room, louder than before, and her chest tightened. She turned to see where it came from. A group of well-dressed diners, watching her with mocking smiles, whispering behind raised hands. Her cheeks burned, her throat closed, and for a fleeting second she wanted to disappear entirely. But she couldn't. She had to walk toward them. Table 7 awaited. Table 7 gleamed with crystal glasses and polished silverware, the kind of setting where power was expected, not questioned. 4 men and 2 women, dressed in tailored suits and glittering jewelry, leaned back in their seats with the arrogance of those accustomed to being served, not challenged. Sarah approached slowly, her pulse thudding in her ears. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, praying her voice would not betray her this time. Good evening, she began softly, her tongue already rebelling. Can I take your order? The first stumble was all it took. One of the men, broad-shouldered with a cruel grin, leaned forward. Take your time, sweetheart. We've got all night. His companions chuckled, the laughter spreading like spilled wine. Sarah's face burned. She lowered her eyes, trying again. Would you like to hear the specials? Specials, another mocked, exaggerating her stammer, earning more laughter from the table. The sound pierced through the restaurant, louder than forks against plates, louder than music. Sarah's fingers clutched the notepad so tightly her knuckles whitened. Inside, she wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor tiles and never be seen again. But her body stood rooted, trained by years of survival to endure, to stay professional even as dignity bled away in front of strangers. She forced herself to write, nodding mechanically, pretending she didn't hear. But every giggle, every imitation carved deeper wounds. Her chest rose and fell quickly, a storm contained within fragile ribs. The mockery escalated. One of the women cupped her hand over her mouth, whispering loudly enough for Sarah to hear. Do they even train their staff here? Or just pick anyone off the street? The laughter roared again. A shard of glass seemed lodged in Sarah's throat. She placed her pen down, steadying her hand against the edge of the table, fighting the tears that blurred her sight. The world tilted, and for a moment she feared she might collapse. And then, the front door opened. A hush swept briefly across the room as a new guest walked in. The kind of presence that made people notice without even knowing why. A tall man, his face half hidden under a cap, slid into the booth at the far end. To most, he was unmistakable, a star whose voice had commanded screens for decades. But Sarah, caught in her spiral of humiliation, didn't lift her gaze. The laughter at table 7 rose once more, oblivious. Sarah, trembling, tried to summon her strength to finish the order. The laughter at table 7 had reached its cruel peak when a voice cut through the noise. Deep, steady, commanding. "Excuse me, miss, it wasn't sharp," but it carried a weight that drew every head toward the far booth. Sarah froze mid-step, startled, her notepad pressed to her chest. The man in the corner had removed his cap, and the room seemed to exhale in recognition. His face was unmistakable, a film star whose characters had stood fearless against injustice for years. Now he was looking directly at her. "Could I place my order?" His tone was gentle, deliberate, as though every word was meant for her ears alone. Sarah's lips parted, but fear coiled inside her. What if she stuttered again? What if even he, this admired figure, joined in the laughter? Her hand shook as she approached his table. Yes, sir," she whispered. The diners at table 7 leaned back, smirking, waiting for the next stumble. But the actor leaned forward, his gaze unwavering. "Take your time," he said firmly. "I'm in no hurry." Something shifted in Sarah's chest. A pause, a breath she hadn't allowed herself in years. She tried again. Would you like to hear the specials?" Her voice faltered, but this time no laughter followed. The room was quiet, waiting. The actor nodded. "Yes, please. Every one of them." Sarah blinked, her eyes burning with tears she fought to hide. For the first time that night, someone wanted to listen. Then he turned his head toward table 7. His voice, when he spoke, was not loud. It didn't need to be. "You laugh at her," he said, his words slicing the silence. "Not because she is weak, but because cruelty is easier than kindness." The mockers shifted uncomfortably. Their smirks faltered. The other diners sat frozen, watching. Her courage to speak, despite struggle, is worth more than all your polished words combined. Sarah's knees weakened. She clutched her notepad tighter, her heart pounding. No one had ever defended her like this. Not at school, not at home, not anywhere. The restaurant buzzed with unspoken energy. Eyes darted between Sarah and the star, between power abused and power used to shield. For the first time, Sarah felt the weight of the entire room wasn't crushing her. It was lifting her. For a long moment, the restaurant seemed suspended in silence, the weight of the actor's words pressing against every corner of the room. Sarah stood frozen, her notepad clutched in trembling hands, her breath shallow. The same voice that millions adored on screens had turned its strength toward her, shielding her where she had always been left exposed. Then the spell broke. The owner, flustered, hurried from behind the counter, wringing his hands nervously. I'm so sorry, sir, miss," he stammered, bowing slightly toward the actor before turning to Sarah. "This is unacceptable." They had no right, but Sarah shook her head faintly. For once, she didn't want someone else to carry her shame or to apologize in her place. She wanted to stand. Her gaze lifted to the diners at table 7. The once smug faces now looked uneasy, their arrogance dimmed. One of the women stared down at her glass, avoiding eye contact. The broad-shouldered man who had mocked her shifted in his seat, clearing his throat as if words might absolve him. But no apology came, and strangely, Sarah realized she didn't need one. Her chest rose with a steady breath, and she spoke, slowly, carefully, but with more strength than she ever had before. I mace to stutter," she said, her voice trembling yet resolute. "But I'm still speaking. I'm still here. It wasn't smooth. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers, and for the first time, the sound of her own voice didn't fill her with shame. It filled her with pride." The actor smiled softly, nodding once as if to say, "Yes, that's it." Around the room, murmurs of approval spread. A few patrons even clapped quietly, not for the celebrity, but for the young woman who had found her courage in the face of cruelty. Sarah exhaled, shoulders loosening as though she had been carrying years of weight that finally slipped away. When the night drew on, the orders resumed, the noise returned, and life in the restaurant moved forward. But something fundamental had shifted. Sarah no longer walked with her eyes fixed to the floor. She met customers' gazes, even when her words faltered, and she no longer mistook their impatience for truth. At the end of her shift, she glanced once more at the far booth. The actor was gone, leaving behind only a signed receipt and a note scribbled in quick handwriting. "Never hide your voice. The world needs to hear it." Sarah folded the slip carefully, pressing it against her heart.